Hello and welcome to Starts and Grafts. I'm Conor Gaffog, and each week I'm joined by an emerging artist to discuss the highs and lows of forging a creative career amidst a global pandemic. My guest this week is Georgina Ambrey, an actor who was doing big things before the pandemic came along, making her professional stage debut in The Rise and Fall of Little Voice at the Theatre by the Lake. She's a Lancashire lass and a fellow Boltonian, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about her journey so far, as well as talking about class and accessibility within the arts. So Georgina Ambrey, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. I was actually, when you first asked me, I was actually quite nervous because I thought, oh God, I don't think I've got anything that interesting to talk about. But then once you sort of hinted at what we might be talking about, I actually got really excited. So thank you for having me.
Not a problem.
It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you on. How is lockdown treating you, this lockdown 3 that we're currently in?
I'm not gonna lie, this one's definitely the hardest. I think the first time it was all a novelty, plus the fact, so literally the day lockdown happened, like the day before, my landlady kicked all of her tenants out, and we only had a verbal contract, so she was allowed to. And so I moved back to Bolton. So I thought, oh, I'll be here like 3-4 weeks max. I was there 6 months in a really small house with my mum and stepdad. But it was actually nice getting to spend so much time with them, but it was a bit mad.
She just booted you all out?
She was, understandably, like, the virus is scary, but she was an utter germaphobe. And she just didn't trust any of us. She was like, if you leave this house for 1 minute, you're all out, blah, blah. So we're like, oh, well, fine, we'll just go anyway if you're going to be like that. So yeah, so we all got pretty much kicked out. So this one's been weird because at least in the last one, I was working in a college for children with disabilities. So we were still going in. So I was still seeing people every day, whereas we've been doing it online. And I mean, with mainstream students, I imagine it's tough, but with children with like severe autism and stuff, it is a challenge. So it's been weird, but yeah, some good things have come out of it, but it's very strange.
So what are you teaching them, Georgina, in that sense?
So online at the minute, the class that I'm with, it's just stuff like basic English, maths. I'm in a class called Learning for Living, and it's sort of just life skills. Whereas when I was working in the college, I was more a carer. So I was with the class that were the most disabled in wheelchairs. So it was more tube feeding, changing, physio. So it was, I've not been with this class before that I'm doing online. So it's been a lot different. But yeah, good. At least I have a job,
It sounds like what you're doing now is a huge difference to what you were doing in the first lockdown, and then
Nothing.
A huge difference to what you were doing before that as a performer.
Yeah.
But like you said, the fact that you've got a job is a huge bonus right now for so many people that, work in the creative industry. So many of them don't have an income.
No, I know. I didn't in the first lockdown. It was really hard because I was in a play in March in London, and it got cut short because of COVID. And it was actually hilarious because we're 99% sure that 5 of us had COVID. We were so ill
at the time.
And, yeah, it was mad. So, I'll do a mini tangent first. So I really enjoyed it. It was Lacage Fall at the Park Theatre, and it was so much fun. The cast and crew got on really well. It was a joy, and it was only quite a short run anyway. And we had about 10 days left, I think. But the week and a half before, one of the main guys got a really bad fever, really fatigued, really under the weather and stuff. And then 3 of the other guys got it. And then, so the guys and girls had different dressing rooms, sorry. But I had to kiss one of the lads. And so I was the only woman that got it, which is really interesting because it was a tiny dressing room. But yeah, we were just all so ill. And then I was actually really grateful the day they cancelled it because I woke up and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. I was just so ill. But I didn't think it was COVID at the time because I'd completely lost my sense of taste and smell. And that wasn't a symptom at the time. And I was just like, Mum, everything tastes like cardboard. I just didn't know what was going on.
So that was back in February. And I think what was really interesting at the time was over the course of that month, the view towards COVID in the UK just shifted completely. At the start of the month, people weren't particularly serious about it. And then by the end of the month, we were all like, what the hell is going on? So over the course of that period, did you notice little restrictions coming in? And were you treating your audience differently in the theatre towards the end of the run? Were people having to wear masks or social distance or wash their hands to happy birthday?
So when we were in there, we'd been hearing whispers of it for a while, and then once a couple of the guys were getting ill and had fevers, a few of the crew, completely understandably, were getting really anxious because they were like, we shouldn't be in, or the actors should be off. But because it was such a small theatre, we didn't have understudies. So if one of them was off, the show was cancelled. So I think it's such a hard balance for smaller theatres who can't afford understudies, but can't afford to shut the show, because it is so much pressure on you as the actor to literally be in a peak of like physical health all the time. It's really hard. So yeah, so when we were there, we ended up having sanitizing stations behind the wings. So every time before you went on stage, you'd have to sanitize your hands. But even then, people, I think we were still right at the beginning of it, so it wasn't as frightening or as serious as it then became. So no, people weren't wearing masks. Like I was still every night. I enjoyed eating my dinner in the corridor and would like chat to the cast in the studio theatre and stuff. So no.
But I think, like you just mentioned, for smaller theatres that can't have, for example, understudies and stuff, it's going to be such a difficulty moving forward. I mean, I know there's like call outs for like ads and stuff like that where they're having to get people on set, on standby 2 days before with a negative COVID test ready to go in case the main actor, has to pull out.
I've seen those. Yeah, those been put out.
It's insane. There's so many more costs and logistical things to be considering at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to get worse moving forward. But I mean, yeah, it's really interesting for you that you got to be working right up until that cutoff point, I think. But I want to talk about Little Voice because that was one of the big things that you were doing before, well, way before COVID came along, actually. I think it was back in 2019.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this is ironic. I haven't told a lot of people this. So it started April, and the run was meant to be till November. So it was actually 3 plays. It was rep, but Little Voice was like my main one. But I got the flu really badly 4 months in, and I had a couple of shows off. And then obviously again they had no understudy. It was rep. We still had rehearsals going for a 3rd play. So it was my first job. I didn't want to not impress anyone. I was so grateful for the opportunity. I carried on doing every single show for a month, and I got so ill I ended up having to go to hospital because like I just couldn't move. I was so ill, so I ended up having to leave right at the end of July, and then someone else took me over for like the last couple of months. But before that, I had a right blast, and I loved doing Little Voice.
Because you were playing the title role of Little Voice, which is such a huge, demanding part because it's got lots of dimensions to it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the play for those who don't know it. But what was it like just getting that first professional kind of stage debut? And it was such a big part in what's quite an iconic show.
Even now, I can still feel it. It was really, what's the word? I don't know, sort of energizing, trippy. Because I remember when my agent told me about the audition, and I thought, I have always wanted to play that part. Whenever I've seen it dotted about at other regional theatres or in London or whatever, I've gone, I really want to play that. Especially because I sort of always assume it's in Bolton. Like, it just says like a northern town, but I always just imagine it is Bolton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool, and I loved it. Oh my gosh. So I always do daft voices, and I couldn't wait to have a go at singing these amazingly iconic women. So yeah, so I think rather than being overwhelmed, I was just more really excited by the challenge. Once I was there and like I met the cat, like it was really surreal. I think whatever your first professional theatre job's going to be, you're going to feel euphoric and daunted and all these different things, because there are people that have had as many years experience in theatre that you've been alive. So it's quite it is quite overwhelming, but I was like a sponge. I just learned so much from so many people and picked things up. And I think the main thing I learned actually was to not perform on the first day or try and be perfect, because that's something I've always really struggled with. Is I want to prove why they picked me. So I tried to be like really good from day one. And then, some people hadn't learnt the lines 2 days before the show and they were like, they'll sink in, they'll come. And I was like, oh dear God. Whereas I was off book with all 3 plays before day one. Like I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing. But yeah, so I learnt a lot, but it was, she was a great role. I loved playing her.
That's because, though, for you, it was such a brand new experience. And I bet you went into it thinking, oh my God, I've got so much to prove. But like you just mentioned, I think I've always assumed that it's set in Bolton because it's written by Jim Cartwright, a Boltonian playwright. And I think it's so popular back home. I mean, in my school that I went to, every year there was a GCSE drama group doing it. There was always an Amdram group doing it at some point as well. So was the kind of, we'll talk about the kind of impression side of it after, but did you feel a connection with it before you'd even audition because of that local feeling that it has, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I think that's what I mean. I think so when I even before I even knew about the audition, it was always a part I wanted to play. And I think especially as well, not to get like sort of body imagey and things like that, but I always imagined her to be like this really petite, skinny person, and I'm like sort of 5'4.5". I'm quite like average build, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to play a little voice, not stereotypically really small or not really petite. So that was always something that I'd also wanted to explore. So yeah, out of the 3 plays as well, it was definitely the play I enjoyed the most. And character-wise, psychologically, she was the one I enjoyed discovering the most.
You know why it's a gem of a part as well? Because it's not stereotypically northern in the character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because unlike her mum, who's so harsh and so gruff.
She gets a chance to really shine.
Yeah.
Going on to the impression side of it, then you get to impersonate all these old school singers and performers because that's how Little Voice, the character, comes to life. She's quite shy and timid, and then she has these big moments on stage where she embodies somebody else. Like, how did you prepare yourself to impersonate these like really well-known figures and do it justice?
Yeah, so I had an amazing MD called Greg who was so supportive from day one. But my thing, I did loads of research on the actual women themselves because I sort of thought the songs that they sung and the way that they sung them, I felt really was like a piece of them. So I first did all research on that. And then after that, I studied music at uni anyway, and I've always had a good ear for things, and orally I can pick things up really, really well. But I just listened to their songs on repeat all the time, walking to the bus, going doing my supermarket shopping, anything. I engrossed myself. And then I would also, words that I might find a bit harder, I would just listen to it again and again and again and practice the shape in my mouth. It was all about the position of your mouth and things like that. Or for example, Shirley Bassey was definitely the one I found the hardest because like, who can do Shirley Bassey other than Shirley Bassey? But she was a powerhouse. So much of that was like actually in your body. So it was really fun. And also I watched loads of how they actually performed because Edith Piaf, who I loved doing her song, she always stood very still, very centered. And again, I think that helped me know where to place the voice in my throat and in my mouth and stuff. So it was so much fun. It was like an amazing scientific experiment.
But not only that then, so you got to this amazing role and impersonate these amazing females that have been so pivotal within the arts and stuff over the last century or so. But also, you got nominated for a bloody award. You got nominated for a stage debut award for Best Actress. That must have felt insane.
I laughed my head off because when I saw who I'd been nominated with, it was 2 girls from 6, and I was like, who am I? This tiny little person from Keswick, where people don't even know where that is. Like, oh, it was so funny. Yeah, and then one of the woman who won, she was from The Colour Purple. It was amazing. It was such a surreal evening. I just felt so blessed to be there. It was lovely. It was so warm and welcoming, and yeah, I was sat on a table with the rest of the cast of The Inheritance, which I'd seen earlier that year, and I thought they were phenomenal. So I was trying to like not be a fangirl. I was trying to sit there and be like, I belong here. But inside I was like, what am I doing here? It's like imposter syndrome so much.
Trying to completely back yourself. You're like, I deserve to be here. But I suppose as well, like, does that feel like a distant memory considering what we're going through at the moment? Or does it still feel quite, relevant and at the front of your mind?
Yeah, it was actually really nice seeing the nominations this year for all the people for 2020 because that's sort of, well, last year even, because it sort of brought it back. But I think it just feels like a memory like anything else. But when I think about it in terms of COVID and the fact that when you walk through London now and all the theatres are shut, it's sad. It is so sad. And then I think about, I mean, a lot of people who I think do theatre also do, I mean, a lot of them might not, but some of them do screen or some of them do commercial, things like that. I think if you do musical theatre, this must be a killer. Like, imagine if you're a dancer and you live in a really small flat. It's just, I feel so sorry for people like that. So, yeah, when I think back to a room full of people who are thespians on stage, then it is sad. Yeah.
I really enjoyed what you were saying then about before when you were talking about the rise and fall of Little Voice, that you went into it as this kind of just straight out of drama school almost, and you were desperate to impress and you learnt all your lines and everything way in advance. And that really links into the advice that we've got from one of our artists that we gather advice from, which is the incredible Julie Hesmondhalgh, who most people will know from Coronation Street, Broadchurch, what else is she? Happy Valley. And she's done lots of stage work at the Royal Exchange, and she's an activist, and she just comes across as like the nicest person. And she was so kind when she sent this in, because she actually sent us an email directly from herself, and she was like, thank you, this sounds like a really cool project. So I'm really excited to just share some of her words with you, because it's kind of relevant at this point in the conversation. But here we go. So this is what Julie Hesmondhalgh had to say. Enter each new experience not with the cynicism and baggage of some weary industry pro, but with the open eyes and heart of someone who still has everything to learn about the world, the job, the meeting, the craft, and from the people with whom you're interacting, young or old, emerging or established, or from whatever background. Never stop engaging and learning and filling yourself with new experiences and knowledge. It'll make you a better artist and a better human too. How great is that?
Wow, that's so lovely.
Do you think your outlook towards the industry has changed because of COVID, if that makes sense?
What she just said was actually that was so nice to hear. Yeah, it's changed in the fact.
Let's just let it sit. Let's just let it sit for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, Julie. It's just, oh, lovely. It's changed in the fact that I definitely felt myself being one of those actors who's then panicking, because I felt, as I said, I think I had a cracking start to my career. I felt really lucky. I had rep, and then a few months later I got the thing in London. And then again, the day after everything stopped in with COVID, I was meant to have an audition for something at the Harold Pinter. And I couldn't believe it. And it felt really good. I felt like I was really connected to the part. And I was like, oh, it's really, really good. And then obviously COVID happened. And I hadn't done any screen at this point. And so for me, my career was pretty much theatre. So with everything that's happened with COVID, my outlook's definitely changed in the fact that I was panicking, thinking, oh, should I be emailing casting directors myself? Like, do I need to make a show reel? Do I need to this? Because it was just, it's so scary not knowing. When things are normal, opportunities, they come along every now and then. Something will come up again. But in a state that we're in now, you have no idea when you're next going to be doing it. And so, yeah, it was scary. Like, just every now and then I'd feel this absolute lull in my chest for days. And I thought, it's simply because I miss being creative with other people and performing. And yeah, so yeah, my outlook's changed in the fact that I've had to tell myself to be patient, so it's more than usual.
But I think this period has really made people realise, on one hand, how fragile the industry kind of is, but then also how resilient the people within it are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been amazing seeing how arts organisations have had to adapt to connect with their community as well. So do you remember, did you ever visit Slunglow when you was at Leeds? Did you ever hear of Slunglow?
No, I didn't, but I'd heard of them.
Yeah, so they had like a space in Holbeck in Leeds, and they were like really community based, and it was pay what you want and kind of thing, which is just a brilliant incentive to making the arts inclusive. But they've basically not been able to put on any work throughout pretty much the whole of 2020 and now, and they've just operated as like a food bank for the local community for the past 9 months.
Wow, I've seen actually quite a lot of small theatres have started doing that in London too. Yeah.
And it's great because I think it's just putting the value on that yes, we're a resource, and if we're a venue, we've also got the space. And I think a lot of theatres will really come out of this period actually with stronger community ties than they had beforehand,
Yeah.
which is definitely one positive that we can take from this. And I think, like Julia Hesmondhalgh was saying about learning and engaging, and everything's a new experience. I suppose that's one thing that we can kind of take from the pandemic. And our kind of the Octagon, which is our theatre in Bolton,
Yes,
they've been
yeah.
doing so much for like the elders community. And it's just,
Oh.
yeah, I think it's just so heartwarming to kind of see that things are
Mm.
still happening, but in very different ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. It's nice that, because theatre in itself is a community, and I think it's really nice that people just haven't sort of sat on their asses and gone, all right, well, that's us closed for a year and a half. Like, they're still, I think if you're involved in like the theatre or as an artist, your compulsion is to be with people. So I think the fact that they've moved that into, you know, food banks and helping the community and things like that, I think it's a wonderful way of using your crew and the play and the venue itself.
Because what we are in right now, for me, is such a pivotal time for the arts in this country. And when there were conversations surrounding what is and what isn't a viable career choice, you did this brilliant post on social media about class and accessibility in the arts, which I've just been really desperate to speak to you about since. And I probably should have messaged you at the time, actually, because I was like, yeah, people need to be reading that right now. Yeah, let's talk about that. So you did this post, and it was kind of about your own experiences in the wake of being told that the arts isn't viable. Probably a good starting point from what you talked about in the post was your experiences of auditioning for National Youth Theatre.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wish you'd messaged me at the time. Yeah. I was just sort of saying that within the arts, as much as they, you know, there's all sorts of boxes they've got to tick and all this sort of stuff. There's so if you like apply for, say, with Arts Council, and there's things you've got to tick and stuff like that. Class or so like your socioeconomic background is not on there. It is the last thing that people really talk about. It's the last thing that people really think about, and why when it affects so many of us. And it's true, it's within the industry, there's only 12.4% the people in the industry are working class, and that I was
Nuts.
heartbroken and dumbfounded by that. Isn't that frightening? It is frightening. And so yeah, so I was saying in the post sort of how important it is for bodies to keep stuff like scholarships going and all this sort of stuff, because without them I wouldn't be where I am now at all. So I was saying for National Youth Theatre, it was when I was in Leeds, and some people were talking about going for it, and I was like, what is this National Youth Theatre? So I googled it, and I thought, oh god, that sounds really fun. So I told my mum I was booking an audition, and she just looked at me, and straight away she went, George, if you get that, you can't go. And I was like, why? And she said, just look at the money. Like, we can't afford that for like 3 weeks in London. And straight away, you as a person go, oh, and it's like someone's hit your chest because they go, your dream is unachievable. But I'm very resilient, and so I just went, okay, and then I booked my audition anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I'd rather do this now and sort money later. I want to go and at least have the experience. I can afford the audition, so I did, and I got in. And bless her, like my mum and my dad just saw how much I wanted it, and they went, right, okay, we'll put what we can together, we'll do extra hours, we'll pick up extra shifts, we'll do what we can. And I had to work my arse off as well at Leeds. I was waitressing an obscene amount just to be able to afford these 3 weeks. But I mean, I can't decide if I appreciate it all more because of that. And same with drama school, there was no way in hell after a BA degree that I could have afforded to go to a drama school and do a 1 year. Like at the time I really wanted to go to LAMDA and do the 2, but I just couldn't afford it. So I applied to Drama Centre, who luckily did a scholarship that was 50% off fees. And even then it's still a mass amount. So I'm like heavily in student debt. But I was just so grateful that they did it, because as I said, there was me and one other person in my course really who was working class, and there were 18 of us. And it was really hard because like on Friday nights when we'd finish, we'd go to the pub and I'd be drinking tap water because I couldn't afford a pint, because and even now
£5 pints.
I know, oh man, awful. But even now I use Revolut, and so I have a weekly top up, and I have to be so strict and rigid with that because I have very limited funds. So that was a real challenge, and it was really hard as well because, so I mean, I loved my course and I loved the group, but sometimes they'd be like, yeah, we're going to go to the theatre, does anyone want to come? And I was like, I couldn't understand how people could just afford it like that and not have any like repercussions of it. And also, it made me sad that that's the norm for so many people. And for people like you, me, this other guy on my course, it was like, we'd be lucky if we could get a £10 ticket to something. And even then, that would be like our treat for every couple of weeks. Yeah, so it was just about that, really. Sort of the arts just should be more accessible. Things like drama school auditions, like, you can't afford to be paying, if you're wanting to go and give yourself every good shot and say there's 6-7 schools you want to apply for, if every single one's 50 quid, nah. It shuts down so many people's opportunities.
It's so expensive. And Sarah Francombe, who was, I think she was artistic director of the Royal Exchange for some time, when she went to become head of Lambda, like the first thing that she did was like completely reduce the first round fees.
Yeah.
But like you've just talked about then, that 12.4%.
Yeah, I remember that.
For me, right, when you tell people that the arts isn't viable, that goes out to everyone. But for me, the people that are from privileged backgrounds, when they hear that, they still have the resources to continue trying to make that dream work. And when you say that the arts aren't viable to people that are from disadvantaged or underrepresented backgrounds, they're the ones who will go, maybe that's right. And maybe I am pursuing the wrong thing here. I can't consider it. And I think it's just really, really tough. And I think an experience of mine that I thought about, which is probably not completely relevant because, anyway, I'll tell you about it. But I remember when we were at Leeds and I'd done my 3-year English and theatre degree. And bearing in mind, I was like one of the first people from my family to go to university and get a degree and study. And I remember in my final year kind of thinking, I was enjoying directing quite a lot. And there was people saying to me, maybe you should consider it or whatever and look into it. And I'm glad that I didn't do it now because it's not really me. But at the time, I didn't think about it further because there was almost this part of me telling me, you're biting off more than you can chew there, Connor. Like, you've got your BA, you've done that, that's fine. To go on and do an MA at drama school, I had the mindset of it had to be in London. I was thinking, I can't afford that. Like, how can I afford to move down and do all these things? And it's really skew with, especially, I think, when you look at kind of the arts being so London-centric as well, there was never even an idea of possibly trying to seek something in the north or in Manchester or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a real shame. And I think...
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, the thing that's even more ironic is the fact that we're freaking out about having to move to London and having to rent on top of paying fees for this. Whereas most of the privileged people already live in London and don't have to pay rent. So when they're doing the course, all they're paying is the fees, whereas you've got the fees, the rent, the bit, like, it mounts up.
I hope people realise that. I hope people realise how lucky they are to be born into some sort of privilege, whether that's, class, race, or just even kind of within the arts, the geographical ties that are needed sometimes to be able to access certain opportunities. I'm glad you talked about that because people don't realise that things as well.
I think that's made me hungrier though.
Has it?
Yeah. Like the whole way through Drama Centre, I swear, lol if anyone else is listening, I'm pretty sure they would say it's true. I was the first person in and the last one out nearly every single day. I worked my arse off and I loved it. And I loved it for it. And when I was there every day, I would pinch myself every day before I walked in because I was like,
good for you though.
I'm here. Yeah. And just even with jobs in general, I think that's it. I think I'm privileged in a way because I have such a supportive family. So even though we don't have the funds on our like laps, I know, and they did, like they sacrificed a lot to get me to train and to get me to do what I wanted to do. And it wasn't easy, but I had the cushion of them, which was amazing. So for people, I think, who are working class, disadvantaged background and not a supportive family, they're the people who you want to be like, okay, all auditions are free. They're the people that you need to be supporting the most, really, with their dreams and what they want to do. Because sometimes they just want to get out and start a life somewhere. And how can you if no one is going to support you?
That's such a good point. I've not even thought about that aspect, that family aspect. But like you said, with the jobs though and anything, you want to present yourself in the best way possible, and demonstrating that through a work ethic goes such a long way. But you also managed to get, am I right in thinking you got some funding through a local charity back home?
Yeah, it was really, I got a grant from this charity in Bolton, which was so nice. I wrote like letters and emails to obscene amounts of people, but this charity came back and gave me a grant, and it was so lovely. And then when I was at Drama Centre, I would update them sort of with what I was doing. Like when I went to Moscow, I told them about that, and it was really nice. God, yeah, that was, it really helped. But it's nice knowing that people are out there and offering that help,
I think there's that level of help on so many different levels as well. I mean, it's amazing and people should be really backing people when they're going off to drama school and things like that. But I remember just when I was younger and I was doing my singing lessons as a teenager, and I mean, we could kind of afford them, but then when the added cost of an exam came along, it was like, that's 100 quid that we could do without having to spend. But like, even as a teenager, there was like the local Rotary Club that like you could apply for an
Mm,
award for, and like every year I got like 150 quid, and it just made that difference, being able to know
yeah.
that, oh, we can go for that singing exam and it's not a problem with all the added costs and things like that. And like you said, we had to update them and send them letters and things like that. And it's actually really good preparation for striking up relationships, like working relationships further down the line, I think.
Yeah.
Seeking
Yeah.
out funding is a really good skill set to kind of have, I think, for later in life.
Absolutely. It's funny as well because that post that I did about the working class, I was tying it in as well with the fact that I've been cast in a short film that it's like a spoken word narrative that's to do with working class and class in the arts and stuff. And it's my partner that's it's his company. And no, I actually auditioned for it before we got together. So so people don't just think I got it because of that. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and even him, like he's working class and he's trying to start a film company that is, making things accessible for working class. Like if you want to do a casting workshop here in London, it's like 35 quid for 2 hours, which to a lot of people doesn't sound a lot, but to a lot of people that's a lot. So he's trying to like negotiate ways of getting it lower, and he's in talks with industry people all the time on explaining who he is and what he does to try and get lower costs and stuff. But again, him as trying to run his own business, he's trying to like negotiate for loans, for funds. So you're definitely right in the fact that it's really good preparation for stuff like that in the future.
So this is that short kind of film spoken narrative piece that you talk about. Is that in these streets?
Yeah, these streets.
These streets. I was listening to some stuff online. I didn't realize that was your partner, but I was listening to the guy that's the director, and just listening to what he was saying was really fascinating. And I think he articulated the difficulties that people that are working class do have being able to access opportunities. And I'm really looking forward to watching that project kind of unfold and watching the finished product as well, because I think it's such a great story or narrative to be telling at such a relevant time. Yeah, can't wait for that.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about Georgina when she was younger. Can you remember when you first started?
Whee!
Can you remember when you first started performing?
So define performing, because my first memories are me and my sister running about the conservatory. Like I used to have this character called Sally Darks, who is this world famous singer. And my sister was my manager slash backing vocalist, dancer, xylophone player.
Wow.
So I just remember us belting our heads off to Girls Just Want to
Jack
Have
of all
Fun
trades.
repeatedly. Yeah. Oh, she was amazing. Yeah, so that, I mean, we would always perform for our family, and we used to have. Do you know what Miffies are? The little toy rabbits.
I think so. Were they grey? Maybe not. I think I remember. I don't know. I think so.
They've got like a
Cross
cross
eye.
for a
Yeah.
mouth.
Oh, cross mouths. I think so.
Yeah, and Beanie Babies and stuff. And me and my sister would like put on full on musicals with Beanie Babies and like make our parents sit there for 2 hours watching us do it. So they're my first memories, but they're so fond memories. And then other than that, I come from a really musical family. So I was either, as you said, doing musical exams, or I was playing flute in my church. I was part of the church orchestra. So yeah,
You've got to
so
start somewhere.
I know. My first memories of performing acting wise was was when I was at secondary school, really, just getting involved with musicals there.
That's the thing. There's so many different ways in, whether it is the church orchestra or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
we were so lucky with the amount of ensembles
Oh.
that took place, like within Bolton for young people. I remember when we first met. It was in the Union in Leeds somewhere, and it was by the
Yeah.
microwaves. And we both had our like.
Was it in Victoria Hall?
Yeah, but when we first met at uni, it was by the microwaves, and then you were like, "I think I recognise you. I think you were in like Bolton Junior Youth Choir. We did this concert," and I was like, "Probably, probably that was the case." But like you were saying though, there were so many different little concerts that we all got the chance to tap into, whether it was through school or an ensemble. It was like it was insane looking back, wasn't it?
It was mad. We were so lucky because there was so much that like Bolton Music Service did, which I loved. My whole childhood was there. I was there about 4 nights a week, and I loved it so much. But I remember when we were at the Victoria Hall in Bolton and Bolton Junior Youth Choir, and You were in a choir with Carolyn Hudson. What was it called?
Oh, Just for Boys
Yeah,
or Soul Patrol. I was in many an ensemble.
Soul Patrol. I proper thought that you were like our rivals because you were like the funky, like hot kids, and we were the ones who would sing like religious songs. And every time you came, we'd always be like, "Oh, it's Soul Patrol." And then when I saw you at uni, I was like, "It's Soul Patrol, kid."
Oh god, I didn't realise that legacy had haunted me for so long. I mean, whatever you want to say the cool kids were, I mean, it was a lot of all black and step clicking back and forth, playing in kind of like social clubs and stuff. But it was dead good fun. To be fair, no, it was dead good fun. Like, I proper enjoyed it. But like then, so you went and studied music at uni. But at what point during your degree did you think, I want to maybe park this a little bit and start pursuing acting after I've graduated?
It was literally like within 3 weeks of my degree because I went originally wanting to be a professional flute player. Because I applied to audition at conservatoires, but I went to one, and the other people there who were talking, they just sounded so pompous, and I thought, I don't want to be in a place where music is the be all and end all. Like, I want to meet people who do maths and people who do history, and just with a bit more flavour, really. So then I went to Leeds, and literally within 2 weeks, some of the other girls on my course who could play the flute, they were just, I was very good, but they were just natural virtuosic players. And I don't have a chance. So straight away something shifted in me thinking, I love music and this is definitely the right course for me, but this isn't my path. And then the first musical I did at uni was Into the Woods, and I just fell in love with it. So throughout the whole of first year, I thought, right, I'm going to finish my degree, musical theatre. That's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go do an MA. But then at the end of my first year, I don't know if you heard about this, but I severely split my vocal cords. It was really bad, and I couldn't speak for 6 months, and I couldn't sing for a year and a half. I had to have vocal therapy for ages. And ever since then, I was then way too nervous to try and go and sing professionally because I thought I just couldn't handle the pressure of it on your vocal cords, especially if you've already had a vocal trauma. I was just too nervous, but I knew I still wanted to perform in some way. So then in my second year, that's when I then did plays. And then I fell even more in love with sort of straight acting, really. So it's really weird the way things develop.
I do remember that because we were meant to do a show together. We were meant to do Dogfight together, and we'd cast you as the lead, and unfortunately, you had to pull out of it.
That still upsets me so much.
No, but it was completely the right thing to do, and your vocal cords have like healed now, and you've just done this incredible run and been nominated for like an award in a musical. So you've obviously done the right thing and kind of the sensible choice.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
We're coming towards the end of our conversation, kind of, but I could keep going and keep going. I quickly want to talk about Moscow. So when you was at Drama Centre, you got the incredible opportunity to go and train in Moscow. Just tell me a little bit more about like that and what it was like.
I think back to Moscow and literally see it in a golden haze. It was the most magical 2 months I could have ever had in my life. So, I mean, Russia is not perfect by any means, but in terms of drama students going there and going to this school of acting, which is right next to the main theatre in Moscow, it was just a dream. So we had a bunch of different Russian theatre practitioners come in and teach us, and a lot of it was Stanislavski and Vakhtangov based, but their physicality, it was literally all the men, they looked like WWE wrestlers. They were they were all acrobats as well. We went and watched some of the students go and do their plays, and they were like leaping from windows and roly-polying all the way through the audience. We were just like, what is going on? It was amazing. But they were so in tune with every part of their body down to like, their toes. So there was a lot of that going on. And for me, I really felt like my mindset changed when I was in Russia, because I think there's a lot actually about when I watch sort of German dramas or French dramas on Netflix and things like that. There is something about foreign actors that I love, that they are purely for the text. They are purely for the story. I do think it gets mixed up a lot with like social media and Instagram here. And I know myself, when you were saying earlier about has my mindset changed because of COVID, I definitely got this thing in my head that was like, oh, the more followers I have, I might get picked for a role in something because I'm, known more. And I hate the fact that you are a business in a way, and sort of your popularity really comes into that. Whereas when you watch these foreign things, or as I said, when we were in Russia, they didn't care what they looked like. They didn't care, what role they were given. There was this amazing. So most of the plays in Russia are 4 hours long, and they flew by. They were incredible. And there was this one woman who came on, and she had 2 lines in the whole play, And she's the thing I remember, because she just floored me. And I was just like, their dedication to the art itself and their mindset to the art itself is purely generous and purely for the other. So when I was there and I was surrounded by that for 2 months, it was magic. It was really
It must
good.
have been surreal.
Although we felt really, really ignorant in restaurants because we could not speak a word of Russian.
They do treat it differently, though, and I remember a similar experience when I was lucky enough to be in Belarus, but that's another
Wow.
story. To get to go to like the National Opera and the National Ballet and to see groups of teenagers sat next to couples on date nights and then families, and the demographic of people in the audience was a lot different, and I think there's just a different value to performance in those countries, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and it's such a good opportunity that you got to have.
So it's the drama centre's actually closing this year, which is really sad because of funds. But this year that have just gone, they didn't get to go to Moscow, and I was just like, that for me was like one of the best parts of the year. So I feel so sorry for them.
That's a tragedy, though, that somewhere that's providing those opportunities is having to close because of lack of funds. That's awful. That's tragic. But let's wrap things up with this last question. It's been so good talking to you.
It's flown by.
So I want to know, if you were to look back on what you've achieved so far, what advice would you give yourself when you first started pursuing acting?
Gosh, so much. I'm still learning a lot of what I'm preaching as well. Okay, there's a few main things. I think one mainly is that your path is your own path. And again, like, I think I have such a love-hate relationship with social media, but I think so much of seeing what people are constantly doing, or it's like, oh, self-tape, outtake set, and you're like, I haven't had a tape in 10 months. And it's, you've just got to trust that your journey's your journey, because as well, over the last 10 years, I've had so many medical things go wrong. But if they hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm not saying I'm grateful for what happened, but just sort of when it is happening, just be like, okay, this is where I am now. Also that I'm in it for the long haul, so just graft and be patient. Because my course leader said this amazing thing where she was like, you want your career to be a slow stewing casserole. You don't want it to be a quick trip to McDonald's. And that was something that like always really stuck with me. And I think to stand up for myself more, just, I mean, in general, different story, but also within the industry, because as I said, sort of that first job that I did when I got ill, if I'd been a lot more firm at the beginning of going, no, I need this amount of days off and then I'll see how well I am, I probably could have finished that run. But because I constantly just wanted to please and I put myself and my health last, I had post-viral fatigue for about 5 months. I have never been iller. It was the worst time of my life. It was so sad. So I think just listen to your gut, and I've taken that forward with the other opportunities that I've had, to listen to my gut for what feels right or what doesn't. So yeah, I think that. But as I say, it's difficult when you've got pressure from different corners for things. But just, yeah, I think they're the main things I would take away, really.
What brilliant words framed within like a really pivotal real life experience for you. But yeah, Georgina, it's been so good chatting. Like, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so glad we've managed to like find time to do this and navigate through the little bit of a lag that we've been experiencing. But yeah, thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you so much. It's been so nice. It's been nice, like I say, catching up, sort of catching up. But yeah, it's been really nice. Thank you.
A huge thank you to Georgina for joining me on the podcast. I think it's so important that we use this time to shed light on a range of people's experiences. So it was great to chat about the issues surrounding class in theatre and just the arts in general. Please tune in again next week, and in the meantime, follow us on social media at startsandgrafts on Twitter and Instagram. I've been your host, Connor. Ella's been your producer, and we'll see you again very soon. But until then, take care.